It was the morning of October 11th, 1918, on the tropical island of Puerto Rico. The sun rose over the hills, casting golden light across towns brimming with life. Along the western coast, the smell of salt hung in the air, and waves lapped gently at the shores. Fishermen prepared their boats for a day at sea, children played in cobblestone streets, and shops opened their doors for business as usual. No one could have guessed that beneath the waters of the Mona Passage, immense geological forces were building pressure that had accumulated for centuries. At precisely 10:14 in the morning, that pressure was about to erupt. Without warning, the ground shook violently, signaling the start of what would become the San Fermín earthquake. Residents would have only moments to realize that this was not merely the earth trembling beneath them, but the beginning of a disaster that would combine the fury of both land and sea. At 10:14 in the morning on October 11th, 1918, Puerto Rico was struck by a magnitude 7.1 earthquake with its epicenter just off the northwestern coast. The ground rolled violently, sending shockwaves through towns and farmland. In Aguadilla, the quake reached a level 9 on the Magnas Mercalli intensity scale, causing severe damage to brick buildings and industrial structures. Mayaguez, the largest city on the west coast, suffered heavily as roughly 700 masonry buildings were either destroyed or badly damaged. Landmarks like the municipal theater, schools, and the post office crumbled, while chimneys of sugar mills snapped under the shaking. Bridges twisted and fell into rivers, cutting off vital transport routes. Eyewitnesses described the ground moving like waves across soft farmland, a terrifying ripple that made the earth itself seem alive. In these moments, it became clear that this earthquake was not a minor tremor, but a disaster capable of reshaping the landscape and overwhelming communities. Minutes after the earthquake struck, a deceptive calm settled over Puerto Rico's northwestern coastline. But this was only the prelude to a far deadlier threat. Residents along the shorelines of Aguadilla, Rincon, and Mayaguez noticed a phenomenon that defied comprehension. The ocean began to recede at an alarming speed. In Aguadilla Bay, water drained from the harbor so quickly that boats were left awkwardly sitting on the exposed seabed, and coral reefs, normally hidden beneath the waves, were revealed in full detail. The retreat of the sea exposed areas that had never been seen by human eyes, leaving fish stranded and flapping helplessly, a harrowing warning of the disaster to come. This unnatural withdrawal lasted for approximately 4 to 7 minutes, yet it was long enough for many curious residents to step onto the temporarily exposed ocean floor, unaware of the danger looming. Local accounts indicate that a lighthouse keeper at Punta Brinquen observed the water pulling back while the earthquake was still ongoing, highlighting how quickly the event escalated. Scientists today understand that this sudden retreat was caused by the displacement of water from the seafloor as the tectonic plates abruptly shifted along the Mona Rift. This withdrawal was essentially the inhale of the tsunami, signaling the immense force preparing to strike. As the sea receded, debris from previous storms, floating logs, and small fishing vessels became trapped and tangled, making the exposed seabed a chaotic landscape of destruction. In towns like Mayaguez, the initial withdrawal caused confusion and awe, with residents observing the ocean's raw power without realizing the deadly wall of water would return moments later. The eerie calm created a false sense of security, emphasizing the deceptive nature of tsunamis. This moment between the earthquake and the tsunami was crucial in understanding the rapid sequence of the disaster. The earthquake itself had already weakened buildings, snapped chimneys, and cracked bridges, leaving communities highly vulnerable. The retreating sea was not just a spectacle, it was the ocean gathering its full destructive potential. Within minutes, the coast would witness the unimaginable force of nature, a towering wave ready to erase everything in its path. By the time the first surge hit Punta Aguirreada, the wave had already grown to over 20 feet high, equivalent to a 2-story building, demonstrating how even minor delays in recognizing the danger could prove fatal. Smaller bays and inlets along the coast amplified the wave height due to their funnel-like shapes, making some locations more vulnerable than others. The timing, speed, and force of the tsunami were dictated entirely by the energy released from the sudden vertical displacement of the seabed, and the residents had no warning system to prepare them. This terrifying moment illustrates the raw unpredictability of natural disasters. While the earthquake had already caused widespread damage, it was the silent approach of the sea, hidden in plain sight, that would deliver the most devastating blow. Coastal Puerto Rico was about to experience the full fury of a tsunami that would reshape communities, claim lives, and leave a permanent scar on the landscape. The withdrawing sea and the first tsunami surge set the stage for a disaster that would test the resilience of every person along the coast. Understanding this sequence helps modern scientists model tsunami behavior more accurately, but for those living through October 11, 1918, it was a lesson in terror with no chance for preparation. When the tsunami finally struck, the coastal towns of western Puerto Rico were transformed into scenes of utter devastation. Aguadilla, located closest to the epicenter, was hit by the initial surge of water that reached over 20 feet in height, obliterating around 300 small beach huts in moments. The force of the wave dragged debris, boats, and even larger structures into the water, creating a deadly, chaotic mix that swept through streets and alleys. In total, approximately 32 residents of Aguadilla lost their lives, their homes and livelihoods erased in minutes. Further south in Mayagüez, the tsunami arrived roughly 20 minutes after the earthquake, with waves around 5 feet high. While smaller, this surge was still strong enough to flood streets, overturn buildings, and drag houses from their foundations into the bay. Cemeteries were not spared, tombs and mausoleums were damaged, and coffins were displaced, leaving a tragic imprint on the historical record. The economic cost was significant, estimated between $4 and $29 million, equivalent to doubling the island's annual budget at the time. Sugar mills, warehouses, and essential infrastructure along the west coast were extensively damaged, and the agricultural sector suffered from flooded fields and destroyed irrigation systems. The earthquake and tsunami together caused widespread structural collapse. Brick buildings, poorly reinforced for seismic activity, crumbled entirely, while wooden structures were torn from their foundations. Chimneys toppled, bridges buckled, and roads were washed out, effectively isolating many towns from immediate relief. The undersea telegraph cables connecting Puerto Rico to the outside world were severed, cutting off communication and leaving the island reliant on internal coordination for emergency response. Thousands of residents were forced to flee unstable buildings and seek refuge in hills or open fields, creating makeshift encampments that persisted for weeks. Fires broke out in several cities due to broken gas lines and damaged electrical systems, compounding the destruction and slowing recovery efforts. Historical accounts from survivors, preserved in letters and petitions to the government, documented the personal devastation of losing homes, businesses, and public facilities. These records now provide modern researchers with precise data on the tsunami's path and the distribution of damage, confirming which areas were most affected and which locations, slightly elevated, were spared. The aftermath also exposed the vulnerability of the island to dual natural hazards. The earthquake followed immediately by tsunami. It became evident that reconstruction would need to consider both seismic safety and coastal flood protection, lessons that would influence building practices in Puerto Rico for decades. Beyond the physical damage, the psychological impact was immense, with survivors enduring trauma and the fear of aftershocks and future tsunamis. The western coast was a land marked by ruin, the quiet after the disaster a haunting reminder of the power of nature unleashed. Even after the immediate devastation, the terror of the 1918 San Fermín earthquake and tsunami was far from over. Residents of western Puerto Rico faced relentless aftershocks, some strong enough to cause additional damage, lasting for up to 9 months after the main earthquake on October 11th. These tremors prevented full recovery, as weakened buildings were constantly at risk of collapse, forcing many to remain in temporary shelters or open fields. On October 24th, a notable aftershock rattled the region again, followed by another on November 12th, reinforcing the sense that the land itself was unpredictable and untrustworthy. The long-term psychological impact on survivors was severe. Constant anxiety, fear of returning to their homes, and sleepless nights were common, as even minor vibrations brought memories of the disaster rushing back. Communities struggled to maintain basic services, with roads, bridges, and telecommunication systems destroyed or severely disrupted. Recovery efforts were further complicated by the lack of immediate external aid due to the severed undersea telegraph cables, forcing towns to rely heavily on local coordination and resourcefulness. From a scientific perspective, the 1918 disaster has provided invaluable lessons in understanding earthquake and tsunami dynamics in the Caribbean. Modern research confirms that the tsunami was caused directly by the rupture of multiple fault segments along the Mona Rift rather than by a recent underwater landslide, correcting century-old misconceptions. Radiocarbon dating of the seafloor sediment confirmed that the previously suspected landslide was centuries old, highlighting the importance of careful geological analysis. Scientists today use the detailed survivor records and damage maps from the event to model tsunami propagation and earthquake impacts, informing contemporary emergency preparedness strategies in Puerto Rico and other seismically active regions. The event led to the development of more stringent building codes and disaster preparedness measures, particularly for coastal communities exposed to both seismic and tsunami hazards. Awareness campaigns, evacuation drills, and early warning research now owe a debt to the lessons learned from October 11, 1918. The 116 lives lost, combined with the destruction of homes, businesses, and infrastructure, serve as a somber benchmark for assessing risk in the region. Ultimately, the San Fermín earthquake and tsunami reshaped Puerto Rico physically, socially, and scientifically. It underscored the unpredictability of natural forces and the importance of preparedness, while also leaving a lasting legacy in the collective memory of the island. Today, the story of October 11, 1918, remains a powerful reminder of the need to respect the power of the earth and the sea, and to plan for events that can strike without warning, forever changing the lives of those in their path.